Hi, in this video we're going to be talking about creating slide builds and magic moves in Keynote. This is going to be taken partly from my book Keynote for iPad, Visual Quick Start Guide. I'm using Keynote for Mac here, but you could do the same thing on the iPad. I'm Tom Negrino, and I'm the author of more than 40 books, including the one you just saw the cover of, Keynote for iPad, Visual Quick Start Guide. That book came out in the fall of 2010, and there's been changes to all of the iWork for iOS programs since. I wrote an update article that's on the PeachBit website, and here's a shortened URL to that update article. So let's talk about slide builds. And what I'd like to do is show you an example of what I did for one of my other projects, our JavaScript book. The challenge here was to describe the JavaScript object model in such a way that it would be visually interesting, and I turned to Keynote for that. So here's a picture of our cat, and what I needed to do was show that the cat, which I'm considering to be an object, has properties, the different parts of the object. So I added callouts to the picture, and each of the callouts represent one of the object's properties. So there's the tail, the head, and the 4 different paws. Now let's pop out of playback mode, and we'll take a look at just how those slide builds work. Here in Keynote, I have 3 grouped objects. I created the word tail, head, and paws, each as separate text boxes. And then I built the lines pointing to each of those objects as separate lines using the line tool up in the toolbar. Once I moved all those lines and the text boxes where I wanted them, I grouped them using the arrange group command. In order to have them move into place, I needed to do slide builds. So as you can see, tail is selected right now, and it shows that it has a dissolve on it. If I click the head group, it also has a dissolve, as does the paws group. Now let's take a look at how I arranged how each one of those were going to come onto the slide. Here we are in the Build Inspector, and we'll click More Options to show the drawer. The first group, the tail group, dissolves in, and that dissolve doesn't start until I click the mouse or press one of the arrow keys. The second group, the head group, also dissolves in. You can see that under Effect. And I set that to happen automatically at the same time as the first build. The pop-up menu here includes on-click automatically after the previous build or automatically with the previous build. I wanted it to all happen at once, so I chose automatically with the previous build. And then I did the same thing with the third group, the pause group. So the first group triggered the next 2 groups as well. So to recap, select the objects that you want to build in, choose what kind of an effect you want with them, and then, if necessary, set their order using the drawer. In fact, let's change the order of these builds just so you can see how it works. I'll take that first group, and instead of doing a dissolve in, I'll move it in. And I'll move it in left to right. I'll select the second group, and I'll move it in. Except this time, I'll move that from top to bottom. And then finally, the third group, I'll move that in. and I'll move that left to right as well. I'm not going to change the order of the group at all, but now let's see how it changed. So with just a few clicks in the Build Inspector, you can completely change the way your slide builds work. Now let's move on to Magic Moves. With a magic move, you start with one slide, you duplicate it, and then at least one object on the original slide has to also be on the second slide. And on the second slide, you can choose to change that object in any number of ways. You can scale it, you can move it on the slide, you can do any number of transformations to it. And Keynote will automatically calculate the changes needed in order to make that happen. I'd like to show you the finished video that I did for the JavaScript project, and then we'll come back and take a look at how I created those effects. If you want to describe more than one object, you can put together objects, properties, and methods to get a better description of an object, or to describe a process. In JavaScript, these pieces are separated by periods, also known as dots, as in internet addresses. This is called dot syntax. Reading left to right, the properties get more specific as we build the object. So we begin with cat, we add paws, we specify front, and finally the right paw. So that's all you really need to know about dot syntax for now. And if you'll excuse me, I've got somewhere to be. So as you just saw from the video, we started with the picture of the cat again. Since we're going to create a magic move, I'm going to jump out of playback mode. Let me close this drawer so things will be a little more obvious. And I want to create a magic move, and I want to start with this particular slide. So I select it in the slide inspector. And then I go to the edit menu, and I choose duplicate. See how a duplicate appeared in the slide organizer. Now what I'm going to do is change the object that is similar on both, that would be the picture of the cat, and I'm going to scale it and move it. Maybe a little bigger. If I go back to the previous slide now, go to the transition inspector, and under effect choose magic move. Dialog that tells me, well, something has to be the same. I knew that already. And now let's preview that. Here's the first slide. And we go to the second slide, and the cat picture has shrunk down and scaled back. Okay, back out of playback mode. So what I did is I added a bunch of slide builds to this as well. And I have all those prepared here on this other slide here. So what I'm going to do is copy them, move back to the slide that I want them on, paste those objects in, and now all I have to do is move them around and set up the slide builds in the proper order. Okay, so I'll move the bubble here. Let me get this out of the way. This is more or less the order I want things in. I'll fiddle with this a bit. Sure that they're all aligned. So I'll select these 4 objects, go to the Arrange menu, choose Align Objects, and I'll align them by the top. It turned out I was pretty much right on the money. And now I need to move the arrow. Okay, so now all the objects are right where I want them. But what I need to do is change their build order. So now it's time to go back and do some slide builds. So I'll select the first object, which is the word cat. Switch to the build inspector. I want to move it in. And I want to move it in from top to bottom. You can see in the Build Inspector preview pane that you get a little preview there. I'm going to do the same with the rest. Here's pause, move in, top to bottom. And there's the last one. And now I want that arrow to pop in automatically. So I'll click on the arrow. I'm going to shorten it a little here. And I don't really want it to move in. Actually, I want it to wipe. And I want it to wipe from the bottom to the top. And then finally, the speech bubble here. I just want that to dissolve in. So now let's just figure out the order of all these items. Since I was talking over this in the original video, I wanted each of the cat, paws, front, and right to all show up after I click the mouse or press one of the arrow keys on the keyboard. So that's cat builds in on click. Same with paws. Same with front. Same with right. But I wanted the line to appear automatically after the line text box appeared. And then finally, the speech balloon is another click. So if we preview this, you'll see how it works. There it is. Cat, paws, front, right, the line automatically growing, and then the speech bubble. So that's how I solved some of my presentation problems with magic moves and slide builds. Now you should go on out there and make some great presentations of your own. Thanks for watching.